All right, let's fire up the engine of a nation's economy. We are diving deep into Pakistan's industries, taking a journey that starts in a small local workshop and ends up on the global stage. It's going to be quite the ride. Just think about the stuff you see every day. That soccer ball on your backyard, maybe the cotton shirt you're wearing right now, or even the sugar you put in your tea. Have you ever stopped to wonder, where does all this stuff actually come from? The story, believe me, starts a long, long way from the store shelf. Well, it turns out they're all products of this incredibly powerful, really complex machine. So today, we are popping the hood and taking a look at Pakistan's industrial engine. This is the force that's pumping out goods, creating jobs, and really driving the whole economy forward. Now, to really get a handle on this engine, we need to break it down into its different parts. See, it's not just one giant machine. It's actually made up of businesses of all different sizes. You can think of them as the heartbeat, the muscle, and the backbone of the entire economy. So, what's the big difference here? Well, on one end of the spectrum, you've got the cottage industry. Picture a family making handmade pottery right in their own home. Then, on the complete opposite end, you've got large-scale industry. We're talking a massive car factory with thousands of workers and fleets of robots. These are basically the two bookends of the whole industrial world we're exploring. Okay, this table here really lays it all out for us. You can see a cottage industry is all about family, right? Using simple manual tools in a home workshop. Then a small-scale industry kicks it up a notch. You've got hired help, maybe some basic machinery, but the really huge leap is to large-scale industry. We're talking a massive workforce, incredible automation, and global supply chains. The big thing to see here is that clear jump in size, money, and sheer output as you move from left to right. And here is where it all clicks into place with some real-world examples. Those beautiful handmade crafts or homemade pickles you find at a local market? Classic cottage industry. That local bakery you love or the shoe repair shop downtown, that's small scale. And the car you drive, the TV you watch, that's the product of massive, large-scale industry. Okay, so we've got the what, the different types of industries, but now let's talk about the where. This industrial engine isn't just spread out evenly across the country. Nope. There are specific hotspots where it truly, and I mean truly, roars to life. Let's take a look at this breakdown. You can see these clear patterns emerge, right? The cotton industry, it's all happening in cities like Faisalabad and Karachi. And get this, if you want world-class sports gear, you have to go to Sialkot. That one city produces over 70% of the entire world's hand-stitched soccer balls. Insane. And for iron and steel, the big powerhouse is in Karachi. Every city seems to have its own specialty. But that just begs the question, why there? Why is Sialkot the global capital for soccer balls and not some other city? It's definitely not random. There's this sort of invisible blueprint, a logic of location, that decides where these industries are going to thrive. The very first part of that blueprint, well, it's written by nature itself. We're talking about the physical factors, the gifts, and sometimes the challenges that the land itself presents. So, what it comes down to is this. Industries need the right environment to survive. It just makes sense, right? A cotton mill has to be close to cotton fields to keep transport costs down. A huge factory needs a ton of water and, of course, flat land to build on. And you're obviously not going to build your multi-million-dollar plant somewhere prone to floods or earthquakes. Nature really sets the stage. But having all the right natural resources is only half the battle. You also need the man-made stuff to make it all work. And these are the economic factors, the whole system that manages the flow of money, materials, and the final products. I mean, think about it. You can have mountains of raw materials, but if you can't get them to your factory, or you can't ship your finished products out to customers, you're dead in the water. That's why good roads, reliable electricity, and easy access to markets are absolutely critical. Then you throw in things like affordable land and maybe some government tax breaks, and bam, you've got the perfect recipe for an industrial boom. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the human element. Because you can have the perfect land and all the money in the world, but without the right people, nothing, and I mean nothing, gets built. This is exactly why industries tend to pop up in and around big cities. You need a big population to supply both workers and customers. You need skilled labor, which means you better have good schools and training centers nearby. And you need those risk takers, the entrepreneurs, to get things started. A place like Sialkot thrives because it has generations of skilled workers and a whole network of businesses that support each other. It's a complete ecosystem, all built by people. Now, for a minute, let's step away from the giant headline-grabbing factories. Let's zoom back in on those smaller operations, because the cottage and small-scale industries, they are truly the unsung heroes of Pakistan's economy. Seriously, their impact is just huge. They create jobs out in rural areas, which means people don't have to flood into already overcrowded cities to find work. They empower women, giving them a real path to financial independence. They make stuff for the local market so the country doesn't have to spend as much on expensive imports. And they export all these unique handmade goods that bring in valuable foreign currency. You just can't overstate how important they are. But, and this is a big but, despite the incredible power of these industries, there's a major challenge the country is facing. Not all regions are getting the same benefits, and this is creating a pretty significant and worrying economic divide. This slide really just lays out the stark reality of it all. So what's causing it? Well, things like an unequal spread of natural resources and a serious lack of investment in rural infrastructure. And the problems this creates? You get deep poverty in some areas and dangerously overcrowded cities in others, which leads to all sorts of social issues. So what's the solution? Well, the ideas on the table are about focusing on balanced development, giving companies real reasons to invest in those forgotten areas, and building up schools and roads everywhere, not just in the big cities. And that really brings us to our final big thought for today. We've seen just how powerful these small-scale and cottage industries are. They create local jobs, use local materials, and they don't need massive investment to get going. So, as we look at this huge challenge of economic inequality, the question we have to ask is this: could empowering these unsung heroes, the small businesses, be the real key to unlocking a stronger, more balanced, and more fair economic future for everyone in Pakistan? It's a question that could very well define the nation's future.